Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
I am. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again with Salt Strong Unchurched. Last Sunday, I spent a little time on the old treadmill. Needed to get a little exercise in. A lot of times when I do that, I will listen to podcasts, just like you're listening to this one. And I like to listen on Sundays to different church services. Love getting different ideas, different opinions. I love just hearing all the different messages. And one that I listen to quite frequently is Joel Osteen. And I know some people love him, some people hate him. Either way, I enjoy his messages, and I think he does a good job of telling real life stories. I mean, something that I try to do is as well, and I'm going to share one with you in just a little bit. And also still tying in, the Bible based part of it is as well. And he had an episode here recently. It was about I am, and the word, or I guess the phrase "I am" is used quite a few times in the Bible from God and also from Jesus when he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And it brought me back to a book that I read quite some time ago, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but it was a fascinating book about our subconscious minds. And if you don't know anything about the subconscious mind, there is essentially your mind that is conscious, that is able to be thinking strategically like right now. And the subconscious mind is really incredible and in charge of all those things that you do subconsciously. Like, for instance, this morning, I had to drive the kids to school early. I don't have to think about it. I know the way. I already know which way to go. I don't have to think about the turns or, the turning the steering wheel. It's all those things that you do subconsciously just because you've done them routinely. But also the subconscious mind is really, really powerful because it can bring you ideas. If you've read like Think and Grow Rich, which I did a podcast on, or any of these, there's all kinds of talk about the subconscious mind, in particular that you can program it. Yes, you can literally program your mind to start believing and coming up with ideas, essentially just opening doors for you, which I remember the first time I heard that. If you're thinking, man, Joe has lost his mind, what is he talking about here on church today? I thought it was crazy too, but I have done this countless times. I have many friends, and I've heard unending stories from all the books I've read about people who have programmed their subconscious mind to do things and to come up with ideas. If you've ever had that idea at like 3 a.m. where you can't sleep, that's your subconscious mind kind of waking you up with this idea that came because of something you had been thinking about earlier in the day. All authors, like any famous author, which I'll tell a little story about in a second, they all say that some call it their muse, right? Their muse, that essentially I would get this idea in my head and all of a sudden that would be the next part of the story. Every single author has some sort of similar story about their subconscious mind or their muse, whatever you want to call it. And so I read this guy's book, and it was very evident that you can start programming your own mind using the phrase "I am," ironically. And it was "I am," and then followed by whatever you want to be. And you can do this for good or for harm, meaning good to yourself or harm to yourself. You're not going to hurt anybody else's feelings, but meaning if you're the kind of person that wakes up every day, or even talking to friends and family saying, "Oh, I'm just a loser, I'm always going to be fat," you're literally programming your subconscious mind and everything about yourself to continue to be that, and maybe even bring on more of that negative stuff. On the other hand, if you're constantly saying, "Man, I am so strong," or I am getting better and better every day. Meaning I'm getting healthier every day. Or man, I'm getting wealthier. I am this. It's amazing the doors that open. So I had a goal to write this book called Fishing for Happiness. And if you don't know the story, I was reading a book a day for almost 5 years. And in the first few years, there was never really a goal of writing a book about it. But as I started doing this, essentially reading a book a week for a few years, I realized, man, this would be really cool to write a book about everything I learned. There was some things that were way eye-opening, and there were some things that just kept repeating themselves over and over again. I had some aha moments. I had some breakout moments. I got over my anxiety during that time, something I'd struggled with for a decade. I chased the wrong things for a long time, women, money, all that stuff. And so I read quite a few books about, just faith and happiness. And I guess fulfillment is probably a better word than just happiness. Could, going out and buying something can make you happy for a short amount of time, but long-term fulfillment is done in a different way. And so I wrote a book about it. And those last couple of years, one of the books I read is the one I'm blanking on right now. So I'm sorry. Hopefully it'll come to me. I had it in my mind before I hit record. And once I record, I like to keep going. I don't like to stop and edit. But I read this book where he talked about saying I am. And so no lie, I've never told anyone this. So every morning I struggled to write. And I had a full-time job, right? I was still, doing Salt Strong. I had a lot going on. We were trying to get this whole thing going, but I made a pact that I was going to write a book and I was going to be an author. So can you guess what I started writing down every morning? And I would do it 10 times in a row. I should have kept them. I ended up burning them. I think I was somewhat embarrassed, and we moved. And I didn't want this just sitting in a box. It was just kind of weird, but I did this for like 2 years straight. Every single day I would write, I am an author. And you might be saying, well, that's just silly, but it did come true. But to me, it was giving me essentially my subconscious mind and giving me the power and the authority, and even sometimes just the strength to write. Because if you've ever tried to write a book, it is incredibly hard. If you have written a book, it is incredibly hard. And it's not the fact that it's hard to study for it or come up with the story or even the outline. It is so hard to get yourself up and just want to write every day. There are some days where it flows, and there are some days where you feel like you've got brain fog to another level. And it's frustrating. And even Jerry Seinfeld, someone had asked Jerry Seinfeld, if you know him, probably one of the top paid comedians of all time, and obviously, made hundreds of millions of dollars just off the show Seinfeld. And how did you get so good? He's like, it's pretty simple. I woke up every single day, no matter how I felt, and I wrote new material. And some of it would stink and some of it would stick. And he's like, that's what I did every day. And you do that for 10, 20, 30 years in a row. All of a sudden you wake up one day and you're really, really good. Not really, really good. You're great. You're one of the best out there. And most people just won't do that. They'll have that bad day. And same with working out, right? I am way guilty of that, where I'll get in a good groove. I'm feeling good. And all of a sudden, maybe you get the sniffles one day, or maybe just whatever, you're just tired. And you're like, I'll skip it. And then the next day is easier to skip. Where his point is, no matter how you feel, even if you have the flu and 104-degree temperature, you find a way to write something, even if it makes no sense. Just the act, the commitment of writing and doing that is incredibly powerful. So I had to do that. And that was the only way I was going to get this book done, not just on time, but just to get it done. I had a million excuses not to do it. I had a brand new child, where Luke and I had started a company called Salt Strong during that time. There was a million reasons for me not to start writing every day, but I did. I literally wrote every day. I was like, all right, well, I want this thing to be close to 250, maybe 300 pages. So I just did the math. I was like, essentially, I need to write one good page a day. That's it. If you really break it down, my goal was a year, if you haven't figured that out. So my goal was a year. And I was like, all right, I want to write one good page a day. And that's what I did. I literally had to wake up every day. And the first thing I would do is, I am an author. And I was just putting that in my subconscious mind. And there were many days where I did not want to write. I did not want anything to do with getting in front of the computer and writing. I mean, can you imagine all the days that you go do fun stuff. I had things I wanted to do, and yet I found a way to do it every single day for an entire year. And then, that included all the editing and all that, and I got it done. But looking back, I mean, that was a big part of it, is the I am an author. And what's really neat is this doesn't cost any money, and you have all the control and all the power and all the freedom to choose whatever you want. You get to choose what follows the I am, right? And I have friends, I've talked about some of them before. I had some old coworkers who were just constantly, there's this one girl in particular, and I won't mention her name, and I pray she finds this and has kind of found some happiness, but she was always and she was a real pretty girl too. Had a big smile in the few times it came out, but just someone who was just always in the dumps, was always so negative, and the worst things would happen to her, which is why she was always in the dumps and negative. And let's just say, for instance, gets in a car wreck on the way to work, and instead of, I'm not trying to say you should be cheerful, because that is a bad thing, but instead of looking at it as like, oh man, I was lucky that it wasn't worse, right? That she still made it into work that day. She would come in and is like, well, that's just my luck. I am so unlucky. That's literally the first thing in her mouth. Like, I'm so lucky. This doesn't even surprise me. Like, she would be talking like that. And guess what would happen? She would attract more travesties into her. I've never seen anyone attract that many travesties into their life as this person. It was almost unbelievable. And it was because she always talked that way. She literally got to choose what follows the I am. And she would literally say, I am just so clumsy, or I feel like I just attract all this bad stuff in my life. And instead of flipping it and saying, hey, I am strong, I am getting better, whatever it is, you get to choose what's after the I am. So that's kind of my challenge here for you, is what have you been telling yourself? And maybe if you aren't where you want to be in life, in your pursuit of happiness and fulfillment, in pursuit of the right job, in pursuit of the right amount of money for you to retire, whatever it is you might be, how have you been talking to yourself? I mean, if you say, man, I am always just making bad decisions on investments, well, no wonder you're probably attracting more of it. And I know it sounds silly and goofy if you haven't spent any time studying the subconscious or seen it work in action or read a lot about it, but it is wild that one simple phrase, I am, followed by whatever you choose to put in there, it works. And it is incredibly powerful. And somehow, through the amazing act of God in this universe, and how, I don't know if it's just him listening and him opening up those doors, but it is wild how that works. And that's the one thing no one can explain. The gentleman who wrote that book, he was very, very spiritual. I won't call him religious, because he's not a religious person, but very spiritual, and trying to understand God and the universe. Like, how is it that we can say something like, I am an author, or I am successful, or I am strong, and it starts happening? Like, is it God just listening? God used that word, I am. Jesus used the word, I am. I am the way and the truth and the life. Is it something that's out there? Is it God that's listening to us? I'd like to think that it is. But either way, I know it works. So my challenge to you is, start listening to yourself. What are you saying? And many times you don't even realize you say I am, but so many people do. It is crazy. Like, oh, I am always this, or I am always this. Start listening to what you're saying, and then be purposeful about putting some good stuff behind it. I would tell you to go as far as writing it down. I know that's something I talk about all the time, is what I do. I try to write every single morning, and I'm 99% good. There's a couple times of, on vacation, or I forget my little notepad, but in general, most of the time I am writing and kind of journaling, and sometimes even writing things like I am. Like I said, I did it 10 times every day for an entire year. And I saw the magic that happened afterwards. And now I am an author. And what's crazy is I still get checks every month. Amazon sends me money every month. I did that, 9 years ago, eight years ago, I guess it was. Amazon continues to send me checks, meaning people are still buying that book. So I am an author. I'm not a famous author, but I am an author. And I really do believe a lot of it came from just that commitment to writing every single day, and starting off by saying, I am an author. I just started believing it. And people would even ask, like, yeah, I'm about to be an author. Like I literally just started believing it. And when you believe it, your body starts acting differently. Your mind starts acting differently. It makes it easier to wake up and do those actions. Doors start opening. I mean, even the editor that I got, it was a whole different story, but that was almost like a miracle. Someone way overqualified to edit my book, and somehow just kind of landed in my lap. Really, really wild story. So anyhow, what are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to your spouse, to your friends, your coworkers? I will be honest. I find myself, and it's the way I'm wired. I talked about it in the Proving and Hiding podcast I did, where I don't know if it's because of trying to be too modest or what, but many times when I do something good and someone says something nice, I'll give you an example. I met a person recently here in town in Winter Haven, and we were talking about boats, and he realized I was a Salt Strong guy. He's like, "Oh, you're the Salt Strong guy." He's like, "Man, I love what you guys have done on that office Lake Ship." And instead of saying, "Oh man, thank you so much," I started like beating myself up. I was like, "Oh yeah, man, you should see the inside." Like I was almost like putting myself down, kind of like that gal who I worked with for many years that was always just beating herself up and talking negative. And I find myself doing that sometimes, and I don't know why. And maybe you've done the same, where instead of just taking the compliment, or savoring the moment of something going well, you tend to maybe beat yourself up and kind of ridicule yourself. I mean, there are stand-up comedians, and we're going to talk about comedians again that do that, the self-deprecating, comedians. And yeah, maybe there's a time for that, but I found I do that too often. And that's something I'm going to be working on. And instead of beating myself, I'm just going to, keep saying, yeah, I am. And I've got some things that I want to be. I'm not going to share them here yet in this podcast. Some of them are personal, but regardless of what you're struggling with, I went through cancer. I didn't know about this then, but if it happened to me again, guess what? I'd be writing down every month. I am healed. I am healthy. I am strong. I'd be writing that down 50 times a day if I was dealing with something like that. So whatever it is that you're either dealing with, struggling with, or just the goals in life, write them down. Start saying that to yourself over and over and over again, and watch what happens. I think you will be blown away with the magic and the miracles that happen in your life. I do believe God is listening to us when we say the word I am, followed by whatever you choose to put in there. So try it out. Let me know if you've done anything like this before, or had any crazy, wild stories with your subconscious mind. I'd love to hear about them. Shoot me an email, joe@saltstrong.com. Otherwise, I will talk to you in the next episode. I am out of here for now. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Love you guys. And use the word I am followed by something positive. Peace. I'm out.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.